you everyone for joining us today in this interview. Today we have Shireen, who's a visual artist, and she's based out of Amsterdam. And I will let Shireen introduce herself first. So over to you, Shireen.
Thank you, Nilanjan. So, as you mentioned, I'm a visual artist. My name is Shireen Ikramullah Khan. I'm from Pakistan, and I'm a visual artist. I'm an art critic. I write for several art publications in Pakistan and in other countries as well. And I'm also a museologist, and I'm also an art educator. Um, so a lot of times I'm asked what is a museologist. I did my master's from the UK in art gallery and museum studies, and I've worked in several museums within the UK and in Pakistan. Hence the title museologist. It's just a formal title. And art educator, I've taught school students, O and A level art students, specifically drawing and some theory which I concocted myself, not that it's part of the curriculum. And I've also taught first year foundation visual art students theory and studio of visual arts as well. So that's just a little bit about me. At the moment, I am I am currently in Berlin, but my husband and I moved from Pakistan to the Netherlands in 2017, and we've been there since September 2017. So that's just a little recap about me.
Okay. Thank you so much, Shireen, for that introduction. To the first question
Sure.
that we have for you today, Shireen,
Yeah.
and that is regarding art education. I have always found that besides the craft, besides several dimensions of making art, such as mediums and building narratives, all of that is thoroughly covered in almost every art school. But the business aspect, in terms of how do you convert art into a viable career option,
Mm-hmm.
if you want to sort of pursue it in an independent
Yeah.
manner,
Yeah.
that portion is almost always missing from even the best of art schools and their curricula.
Yeah.
Um, would you be able to sort of throw some light in terms of whether that is the case across the globe? And if so, then as an educator, what is
Yeah.
your take on the absence of this and whether it should be included typically in an art school?
Okay. Well, I find the question quite interesting because, in some ways, it's a very subjective question. Um, because I can't really, if I'm to be completely honest, I can't really highlight how it is in the West. But of course, I can speak on behalf of Pakistan, and I think India. It's the same scene. Um, so in school, I feel art is just a minor subject, and I'm not talking about art school. I'm talking about children who go to school at a primary level, and art is just a subject where one has fun, and that's it. It's not, which is fine. I mean, art is, of course, a medium where you're supposed to be able to explore and express yourself, and at a young age a child is not supposed to be taught how to um, hold a pencil as such and look at something in a very for instance, with perspective, etc., etc. I feel it should be a more free flowing subject. But personally speaking, I noticed that the places that I taught art, one thing seriously lacking was the exposure to art. And I feel students have more of an exposure to, let's say, Western artists than they do artists from their own home country, which is a very sad thing, number one. Number two, art, as I mentioned, is taught as a fun subject, so it's not taken seriously. So when students, go to, let's say, get to their intermediate level or O levels, A levels, the only subjects they feel worth taking are mathematics and sciences and economics, finance, business studies, which is fine. But art is always left on the back bench. because art is a lot of work, and art is considered to be useless, so to say, by not just students but their parents, etc., etc. So I personally feel at that level, if let's say a school has a counselor or a guidance counselor, so to say, to talk to children about their subjects, about different subjects and what they entail, I think that would be a very good starting point as to what a subject can do for them. So it doesn't have to be mainstream that you become a doctor, you become a lawyer, or you have to um, work in the World Bank, or etc., etc. I feel it should start from a young age, because unfortunately, forgive me for saying this, but I'm not very aware about India. But in Pakistan, parents, it also depends on your family and your background. So a lot of parents are not supportive, especially of boys going into the arts, whether it's visual arts, music, dance, poetry, etc. Um, and it's very few families and parents that would support their child. And even with girls, that they would support their daughters in going and pursuing art as a career path. I think it depends on so many factors: your schooling, your background, how you've been brought up, your exposure to different things, about history, about culture. It's really important. And I think basic thing, a guidance counselor is what is missing in a lot of schools and in educational institutions, at least in Pakistan, whereby children can talk about the subjects they want to take and the benefits, pros and cons of taking a subject, and a nice combination of what to take to be able to make a viable career path. So yes, I feel art is not given the importance it should be given. Um, and I think in art college as well, yes, students, it depends on the art school you go to as well. If let's say it's a good institution, you're already in the mainstream, perhaps, and of course it depends on this individual, him or herself, if he or she makes something of that career path. Let's say you graduate with a degree in sculpture, but then after you graduate you stop sculpting, and you do something else. That's no problem. But if you art is something I feel interconnects with so many things. It doesn't have to be what you studied. Perhaps you could pick up on something else later. For example, I myself, I haven't studied art criticism. It's just something I enjoyed. So I went ahead and started writing, and I started reading and writing. So it also depends on your own perseverance, I feel. Yeah. And if you have a good mentor, I have to say, because I actually do have someone who's been a very good mentor to me, and that definitely helps. Yeah.
So you're essentially saying that building sort of like an awareness in terms of what are the various career options at a very fundamental, at a very young school level itself, so that from there students can build a premise for themselves that okay, these are the pros and cons. And by the time they go to a higher education level, it's more of a conscious decision that okay, I've understood because of the guidance counselor that you talk about that these are the implications, and therefore the decision becomes more conscious, and the student is more aware in terms of what he or she is getting into.
Well, when I say at a young age, I mean about 14, 15, because that's when parents and their children start deciding, okay, what subject should I take in order to, get to university or college, and where should I go when I get to university or college level. I think at a much younger age, before that, fundamentals of art and drawing should be taught. I think it's an important subject. It's an important tool to have and to learn. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Shireen, for your insights in that particular question. I'll quickly move on to the second one, and that is more regarding the present times that we are living in. Of course, I'm talking about pandemic, COVID-19.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And the world is under lockdown, but
Yeah.
a lot of cities as we speak are lifting their restrictions, and
Yeah.
people are slowly sort of trying to move out of their homes and
Yeah.
resume whatever natural, whatever normal
Yeah.
is, the new normal is.
Of course.
In such a scenario, everyone, every level or every kind of an entrepreneur would be struggling in the next foreseeable future in terms of getting projects and basically sustaining oneself
Yeah.
financially. Of course, artists would also face that.
Of
Um,
course.
so, what do you think artists as collective, or at
Mm.
an individual level, or at a
Yeah.
group level,
Yeah.
what can they do to sort of build a community or maybe support themselves? What kind of activities do you think one can sort of get into?
Well, artists have it tough anyways. Artists, musicians, writers, poets, none of us have it easy. Every day is a struggle, because now there's also so much competition. The world is turning out more artists and more musicians. But currently, during this pandemic, I personally, if I may speak about myself first, I have strangely been able to produce more work than I have in the last several months. It's very odd, but for me, Instagram was a very important tool to use.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very important platform. And I think it currently is a very important platform for a lot of artists, because artists are supporting themselves on that platform. Artists, I feel, should reach out to each other just as they are doing right now during this pandemic, through Instagram, through social media, whether it's Facebook or Zoom, or take part in talks, um, take part in video conferences that are happening. There's so many interesting things that are happening. People engage with each other, I feel. I mean, I have met a lot of very wonderful people who I have never spoken to, never seen, never met, through Instagram, through conference calls that I have been interested in listening into. And I feel we have supported each other in ways that we can tell each other, okay, you know what? Let me look at your work, you look at my work. How can we boost each other? How can we promote each other? Um, I think if one uses social media properly and doesn't shy away from it, it can be a very powerful tool. And artists need to feel empowered, need to be empowered, and by doing that for each other is is there's nothing more important than that, because no one is going to do it for you, unfortunately, because during this pandemic everyone has their own problems. um, the best thing you can do is just put your work out there. And it's a very difficult thing to do, because you're exposing yourself, of course, and showing the world, this is me and this is my work. But that's the risk you have to take.
Mm-hmm.
um, but it's a wonderful risk if you think of doing it right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You are also part of a specific initiative on Instagram where you sell your artwork and
Yeah.
then you buy back artwork
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
other.
Yeah. Yeah.
So could you tell just a little in brief in
Yeah.
terms
Yeah.
of how that works?
Okay, okay. So, this artist in the UK who started this artist support pledge, whereby every artist can participate as long as he or she um, prices his or her work below £200 or €200. Um, and once the artist reaches £1,000, their goal of £1,000, €1,000, you're supposed to buy another artist's work. So that has been done by the wonderful Matthew Burrows. I think he's a saving grace in so many ways for artists, at least in the UK, in the EU, even in the States and Canada. I've seen a lot of artists who've participated in this. And I've actually had artists from Pakistan send me messages saying, can we participate? And I've said, I think so. Why not? It's worldwide. It's for everyone. And it's become such a global thing now. You can read so much about the Artist Support Pledge online as well. And there's another initiative called Paper Patrons, established by another UK artist, or I think a group of UK artists, whereby you can, every work is on paper and the work should not exceed £50. So that's the limit, £50, or yeah, that's it, £50. That's the number it has to be. So that's also wonderful. I've also taken part in that.
So again, I guess it sort of builds on the premise that you said that social media, you cannot shy away from it, and these kind of initiatives are only possible because of such powerful platforms as such as Instagram and maybe even Facebook.
Yes.
So now that physical spaces are closing up or probably will remain closed up, we should as artists try and leverage on the digital spaces and probably use that to reach out to other artists and create a push for others.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also feel with Instagram, if you learn how to use it, there's so many interesting tutorials online about how to use Instagram. That's what I followed. You can promote other artists as well. Like if I like someone's work, I'll put it up on my Insta stories saying, check out this artist's work. Why not? I think it's a nice way of, it's good karma, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Shireen, for such wonderful insights on both the.
No, you are so welcome. And I think what you are doing is so wonderful. You didn't mention it earlier, but I met you through Instagram as well, because I watched that webinar you had put up and I really liked it. So, I think what you're doing is fantastic as well.
Thank you so much, Shireen.